how to reduce your monthly expenses. And full disclosure, I love Dave Ramsey and I love his approach. I teach Financial Peace University at various events. I love what he's doing. And so a lot of this comes from Dave Ramsey, but a lot of this is really from me and what has worked for me. So I'm not trying to just give you another thing that you've heard. In fact, I'm trying to highlight various aspects of personal finance that, Dave and I approach slightly differently. So you'll actually never hear me say very many things I disagree with from Dave Ramsey, though he is a one to follow for sure. There's a few things I disagree with, but nothing to write home about. But the first step that I see in reducing your monthly expenses is to track your last month expenses. This is a task, this is an actionable item. This is what you can do on your way to work this morning. Go to your bank and download a Excel spreadsheet from your bank, of your bank account, with all of your expenses. Now, here's the part that might confuse a few people. What I'm saying to you is go to your bank and download that Excel file. What I'm not saying to you is also involve yourself with credit cards. Now, I guess, let me be more clear. How I do my banking, I don't have any credit cards. I don't do debt, certainly not any personally guaranteed debt, which would include, credit cards. I just run all of my expenses like Dave through a checking account with debit cards. So I've got, 2 debit cards. You can kind of see, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but I've got 2 debit cards, one for business, one for personal. That's what I run around with. I don't have any credit cards. So what we want to do is make it so that you are just spending money in one place, right? One place, and that being your checking account. However, some of you have become addicted to points, miles, and you go and put everything on your credit card. We'll talk about, helping you get rid of those in just a second. But what we want to get is one Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet. You don't need Excel. I use Google Sheets. It's pretty much free. So there's no excuse to not get this going. But go download all the expenses from your checking account and go download all the expenses from your credit cards if you're using them. Again, eventually we want you to not have any expenses in your credit card. We just want them in your checking account, okay? So that they're all in one spot. And then what you're going to do is take all of those expenses, not the income, just the expenses from all of last month. So take a full chunk from day 1 to day 30 or 31, depending on when you're listening to this. Take that data and look at all of the expenses and put them together. They'll have it by date. You can sort it and that kind of thing. Because what we want to do is look at all of the expenses. Very few people do this unless you are, kind of going through a personal finance renaissance for yourself. Most people have no idea what they expend. They just swipe and go. There's money in the account. They keep moving. Most people have no intention behind their spending. Well, that's what we're trying to get, is some intentionality behind your spending. So what we want you to do is go and take this data. Should be a long list of every expense that you had for last month, a full month, calendar month. Then we want you to, on the side in another column, create a category, the categories that you are going to spend. Now, you're limited to 10 categories: house, transportation, education, health, those types of things. You get to choose what 10 categories they are. I'm not going to tell you what, the main ones that I choose. We're not trying to get too granular on this. And the reason why we're not trying to get granular on this is because many people, when they think about budgets, overwhelm themselves with the minutia of the details. Right? Instead of just saying house, they'll say rent, utilities, maintenance, gardening. They'll try to go through every single expense, and it's just not necessary, categorizing every single expense. What we want to do is get a picture of where you're at from just a 30,000 foot view. So only get onto 10 categories. You're limited to 10, okay? And miscellaneous needs to be one of them. Okay. I've got news for you. Once you do this exercise, there's going to be a ton of miscellaneous expenses that you just had no idea about. So list the house, list transportation, list food. Those are some basic ones, right? Ramsey talks about 4 walls that are necessary. Your house, utilities, transportation, and food. Those are 4 that you're definitely going to have. You may have, and then miscellaneous is going to be definitely 5, but you may have a handful of different ones, like education. It could be travel, right? Maybe you travel a lot. Clothes. But we want to be able to fit all of your expenses into these 10 categories. That's step number 1. Because before you can reduce your expenses, you got to know what they are. People have no idea about this stuff, but you are. You're going to be a mogul. You're going to follow the Real Wealth formula, and you are going to start the process to make this a success. But you got to start somewhere. This is one of the harder steps for people. I suggest also doing it with your spouse, where you're sitting down together and looking at your numbers together. Okay. That way you can categorize it. If there's an argument, well, wait a second. Is this for house, or is this for clothes, or is this food? Just put it somewhere so we get an idea about what's going on. Okay. The next step is, after you see that monthly spending plan, by the way, or those monthly expenses, we're going to create a spending plan. People call it a budget, but it's not really a budget. Okay. I hate the word budget. Budget seems restrictive. Budget seems like using a phrase I hate. I can't afford that. The last time I said I can't afford that was in November 1st, 2008. It's a psychological thing, man. It makes it so that you feel defeated. Don't feel defeated. I am around the wealthiest people in America. They all have restrictions to that which they will spend money on. And it always has to do with what their preference is. It always has to do with what their plan is. Just because they can spend money doesn't mean that they will spend money. You can call it a budget. I call it a spending plan. Why? Because if you have a spending plan, you can go and say, no, I am going to spend money on this. I'm not going to spend money on that, right? When you're first getting started, you may go and say, hey, we have an objective. We got to live under X amount of dollars. So we won't be spending money going out to dinner. We will be spending money on these other areas. Groceries, of course, you got to have that. But you say we will spend money on private education for little Johnny, or we will spend money on whatever you decide. But the objective is to create a spending plan. Now, here's the reality. The first step, you're going to look at all those expenses. What we want you to do, and we can provide a calculator for you, or formulas. Most of our students know how to use Excel a little bit, but you can Google this stuff. You can figure out, all right, how much did we spend on food last year or last month? How much did we spend on miscellaneous? And you need to get all the totals for that. You don't actually even need to do a formula like those Excel wizards. Like I kind of have become. I didn't realize I would become an Excel wizard, but you can just sum them up, sort them, categorize it, boom, 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 and just be like, yeah, this is how much we spent. We spent X amount on food. We spent X amount on transportation. Okay. Then what we want you to do is create that spending plan. And out of that spending plan, you're going to look at the details of what made up those categories, what made up the grocery budget, what made up the food budget. In fact, the one tip, depending on the categories that you're using, the one tip I like to distinguish is the difference between groceries and restaurants. And I like to look at the restaurant thing because that's us going out. Now, you're not going to get to zero, but are you going out more than you want? You may want to say, groceries / restaurant and then junk food. Are you a fast food type person? I fall on and off the fast food wagon, regrettably, embarrassingly admitting that. And so I have to test myself. I have to look at it. I go, how much money am I spending on? And I say junk food, not just going to, McDonald's or whatever, but like going into the gas station and getting crap that I just don't need. Like, how much am I spending on junk food per month? And I'm like, okay, that's the reason why you're gaining weight, Hovis. That's part of it. So this helps with the spending plan. Figure out what it is that you're going to say, I'm dictating where our money is going. We're going to be intentional with where our money is going. We're going to say, we are going to go to restaurants, but we're only going to spend X amount per month. So we're still just creating the plan. And I'm going to give you some tools and resources to kind of help you with this. So create that spending plan. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss the next episode. Every week, we drop practical money strategies and real stories that'll change the way you think about wealth.